The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings NFL Future Bets and Props. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about how you bet in the futures market, whether tying up your money at the very end of May for a payout maybe in January is actually worth it or not. I guess we'll have to find out if that's the case. If you have a good line, the answer is yes. Most of the time, the answer is no. At least that's my takeaway from it. Maybe talk about some NBA futures as well and just all things going on around the sports betting landscape. If you out there want to help out the show, smash the like button in the comment section, please. In the NFL with the win totals right now from DraftKings Sportsbook, and you can see the VIG that goes along with all the overs and all of the unders. You tell me what your single favorite over and or under is right now as we sit here. And maybe we can get into this as well, but unders before you hear about any injuries or anything else might be a play if you're going to actually be betting some of this stuff so early, because maybe things break in your direction. Things really break for the better throughout the course of the preseason. They tend to break against a lot of teams in the preseason should some sort of key member go down. Or maybe you got a hot NBA tip for me. I want to hear those too. I'll also subscribe to Mayo Media Network on YouTube to help out the show. Bringing them in right now from Bets.tv, launching a brand new show next week, so you should all go subscribe. Get in early. Be one of the very first subscribers to it. Preston Johnson, the Sports Cheetah, Dequan Young, having your own show together. Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, and congratulations on the new show.
Thanks for having us, guys. We're so excited for this. It's been a while. We've been prepping everything in the new studio, the new launch, and then to get a little rehearsal with you is perfect. And next week, the plan is to start our live shows up. So it'll be a show called Last Word Cheetah. I'm the host. Quan's my co-host / producer extraordinaire. And we're excited. It's going to be a show about interacting with the fans, taking calls, kind of old school radio meets sports betting, which just no one's really doing yet, where you take calls and let the people talk about the games they want to bet on and talk it through. So it should be good. It should be engaging. It should be fun, less pressure on you have to have winning picks every night or no one listens to your show. So I've been there plenty of times in the past. So yeah. We're stoked, man. We appreciate you having us on again.
Yeah, no problem. Quan, are you the one who's going to do all these phone call screenings?
I am. I'm going to be talking to the people in the best capacity that I can. I'm also learning from Preston too. I'm not really a sports gambler or sports bettor. My grandma taught me how to gamble, so I play plenty slot. So interested in learning how to actually win some money off of the teams that I love and hate.
Oh, Preston, you got to give him more money to be the producer if he has to answer these calls. Trust me, I used to be a phone screener, and it is the fucking worst. It's awful. So be prepared.
A good heads up for him.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to the people.
Yeah. All right, well, let's jump into this. NFL props and futures going into the year. So I wanted to kind of rehash what I said right off the top, Preston, about is now actually a good time to tie up your money unless you feel like you have the biggest advantage in the world on a number?
I think it's fine. I know some professionals that prefer to just tie up their money week to week, right, or game to game. But I kind of have always allotted a certain amount of my bankroll for preseason futures, whether it be college football, NFL, NBA. And there's going to be pretty massive edges. Now, what you're trying to quantify are getting a little detailed here off the top. But, is your edge bigger on a limited amount that you have to wait to actually cash in, say, 6 or 7 months versus a smaller edge week to week and, trying to compound that money over the course of a season. So that's what you're trying to measure. I just like doing both, man. So I love futures bets. It gives you extra sweats, from the start of the year towards the back end. And I'm all for it. I'll do anything. There's a ton of derivatives now too in these, markets where you can have comeback player of the year, coach of the year, defensive player of the year, all the rookie stuff. And so it offers some extra, I guess, angles or avenues or pathways to, if you like a team, but betting them at different odds and different prices that aren't just over under 8.5 wins, right? Or are they going to win the Super Bowl? Well, what about coach of the year or some sort of rookie that you think will stand out? So there's definitely a lot of opportunity to be had.
Do you think that there's much value in betting? Like, is there any value in the favorites of these, I suppose? Because the favorites are going to be up there for a reason, yet when we look at it and just kind of reverse engineer history, especially when it comes to something like MVP, and I mean, Rookie of the Year is probably a bit more consistent with this, but just Super Bowl futures and MVP futures. I mean, the favorites, I guess Tampa won last year. That's like the first time. I mean, what was Kansas City the year before? Like, they weren't the overwhelming favorites going into the season. They were only that after they won the Super Bowl.
Right. I think it's an interesting time to bring this question up because Tom Brady has just ruined everything, no matter what team he plays for. If you just bet on the Patriots or then the Buccaneers last year, it doesn't matter what their odds are, whether they were the favorite or not. They've just been cashing so frequently that you're up a ton. You're up a ton if you're just betting him week to week against the spread too. So generally, yeah, you don't want to be looking to just play favorites in the NFL. And if it's been Tom Brady, it's just panned out. But in the large macro scope of it all, you're trying to find value in some teams that maybe are flying under the radar to some extent. Right? You're not going to have value usually betting the Chiefs or betting on Tom Brady every year. It could be the case again this year, though. We just don't know. But it's interesting. I think it puts into perspective just how great he is from a talent standpoint, and relative to betting markets, he's just outperformed and overachieved to a level that we really just haven't seen in other leagues and other sports.
I mean, he's out kicking his coverage right now on Instagram and Twitter, just shit talking both Aaron Rodgers and Bryson DeChambeau. I'm actually I don't understand like how this golf match is going to be capped. People don't know. It's Phil Mickelson and Tom Brady who played together last year against like Barkley and Steph Curry and just wiped the floor with them. I think that's what happened at least. Just stuff escapes me in my mind right now. Football was going on at the same time. It's kind of hard, and I think the Masters was right around then too. But now he's got Bryson DeChambeau and Aaron Rodgers. I know Phil just won a PGA championship, but this feels like it's not a fair fight in this sort of competition. Like these weird, like, do you think that the books do well with competition? Like seems to be the only reason that these sort of events exist is to draw in casual people to bet on.
I mean, I think the fans that don't bet still enjoy watching them as well. I'm not familiar with golf as much as other sports, but I'm definitely not familiar with Aaron Rodgers as a golfer. Is he supposed to be pretty good, like theoretically similar to Tom Brady or Peyton Manning? Or I feel like he's, from what I've heard, I think a notch lower, or not, if not a few notches. And if that's the case, then it doesn't seem like a very fair fight.
But last year, like Brady wasn't very good in their match. He jarred one from like 130 from the fairway.
That was big time. Yeah.
And it made it seem like he was awesome. But like Rodgers plays in the Pebble Beach Pro-Am every single year. I have no idea what his handicap is.
Okay.
But just even trying to cap it last year, they were putting, I forget who, it was whatever the Barkley team was. He was playing, I think, with Phil, maybe against him. I'm not quite sure. There was one of them where there was a pro against two non-pros. It was like Romo and someone versus a pro and an NFL player. It's like, bet on the professional golfer. They're going to win. This isn't even close. And when I look at it right now, like, yeah, Phil's won a major, but like Bryson's one of the three best players in the world. Just bet on Bryson. It doesn't matter how good Rodgers
bet on
is.
Bryson. Okay. That's probably the fair assessment then. I just, where did they play at the same format both times?
I believe so. And this one I think is going to be in like Montana this time, which is just strange.
That is, I didn't know they played golf in Montana personally.
There's a lot of open fields out there. But when it comes to these NFL awards, let's start with these. I've made 2 bets so far for MVP, and they're purely for narrative purposes and to spite someone that I do a show with all the time. I have Tua 80-1 to win MVP. I have Sam Darnold 80 or 100-1 to win MVP.
Wow.
Just because when this guy jumps off the bandwagon or hates on someone, all of a sudden that person's the MVP the next season. Aaron Rodgers was cooked in football last year. Turns out he won the MVP. So just bet against him, I found, is a much better strategy for me in actually winning money than just making my own picks. But in an MVP market, like, do you see guys down the board like that you can create a path for that could realistically be MVP? Because they don't need the best stats. They just need stats plus narrative.
Do you have one, Quan?
I think that the Los Angeles Rams made a brilliant move in bringing on Matthew Stafford. I'm a big Lions fan, Pat, and I've watched Stafford play there for 12 years, and you want to talk about an underrated quarterback. You know, the last couple of years, the narrative has been, oh, he can't win. Well, who the hell can win with the Detroit Lions? So I'm big on the Rams. I've been telling people, the last couple of months that I've been a lifelong Rams fan for for my entire life. So I look to him. If he stays healthy, I think I saw something about his thumb being completely healthy. And if he has no back problems, I look for him. He has weapons now, and he has a defense where, he won't have to make all those plays downfield. So I look for him to have a great year. I'm not going to say I'm going all in on him yet, but that would be my pick.
Well, he's sitting right now as the 4th favorite. He has the same odds as Tom Brady to win the MVP. I think a lot of people are feeling like you are.
Oh, yeah. It's time they see what he's been doing and working with in Detroit.
I'm pretty sure that's moved down quite a bit. I think it was 30-1 range, and people, have been betting the same narrative. I'll say this: I'm intrigued by the Darnold and Tua picks. Like, they are pretty far down the list. But you asked, can you find avenues and pathways to these guys winning MVP? Lamar Jackson did it 2 years ago as a 100-1 shot, right? Like, it definitely exists. And it's probably going to be a quarterback. I believe 10 of the last 11 have been quarterbacks. So in a league where it's just all about, whether it's dual threat or just throwing so consistently and frequently in the year 2021, I wouldn't even look outside of a quarterback. I think you can find some running backs that are 100-1. You could try to make cases for it. It's just not going to pay off or be worthwhile. And so it's, okay, what's the quarterback that can kind of come out of nowhere on a team that you don't think could make that leap that does? And ultimately, I'm not sure I am 100% behind the Sam Darnold one, but I could see Miami being similarly good defensively with more weapons for Tua offensively in his second, real season, finally healthy. That one makes some sense, so I'll give you credit for that one, Pat.
Well, I mean, you're going to have to give my co-host credit for that because he said that he said that Tua would probably be in the CFL by this time next year. So,
so that's why.
That's usually a strong indication to bet on that person. And Darnold just left his mighty Jets. So, of course, that only means a
redemption
boost upwards.
story.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. But the way I think that what people overlook, and I ended up on the losing side of this argument last year, was Burrow versus Herbert for Rookie of the Year. And Herbert was playing out of his mind. But I still contend that if Burrow had just played the entire season and it had improved over time, that the overwhelming narrative amongst media members, because it's not like who actually had the best season. That's not who wins MVP. That's not who wins Rookie of the Year. It's who does the media perceive as having had the best year versus expectations. And when you're the number 1 pick and you play up to number 1 pick standards, even if you're not the best quarterback that season, chances are you're going to split the vote or you're still going to win anyway. He won big on Herbert 16-1 because obviously he ended up breaking all the records. Joe Burrow got hurt. And there was just no other competition at that point. It was a great bet. I was completely wrong, but I do stand by that you have to figure out an actual narrative to some of these awards, because unless you get some sort of outlier season, sort of like Adrian Peterson breaking the rushing title, that's the only time you're going to see a non-quarterback win MVP. And if it's someone who was expected to be like okay and they were great during a year, they're going to be the MVP.
I'll say this. I'll make a little quick NBA analogy. Recently, they voted on 6th man of the year, and Jordan Clarkson was the overwhelming favorite right before, up until the end of the regular season. There was some love for Joe Ingles, who's actually his teammate, funny enough, because in the analytics crowd, Joe Ingles just grades out as a much more positively impactful player. And depending on, if you look at the 100 media votes for 6th man of the year, now Clarkson ended up winning because he just scores the most points off of the bench, which has kind of been what the award has been for so long. And it's the narrative of, well, he's the guy that can come in and, make the biggest difference when he comes in and scores points. That's just what it's been. Lou Williams, Jamal Crawford previously too. Now I think the media in those narratives are getting a little smarter. They're getting a little more analytically savvy, because early on Ingles actually had a lead through the first 20 to 25 votes that came in. Now, a lot of the voters in that group, that basket, were a little more the nerdy, analytically savvy voters, but the narrative is shifting a little bit. And so while you're 100% correct on these awards needing to have the narrative and ultimately needing to have a team that actually performs well, I do think that slowly the analytics crowd is kind of weaving its way into making a difference in the awards. Not 100% yet, but I think we're getting there, which I think to have kind of the best of both worlds will be perfect as far as these awards go down the road.
Are we getting there in basketball? Yes. Are we getting there in football?
Football, that's a good point. Fair enough.
That I don't know.
It's fair enough. Yeah. It might take another 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, potentially so. So is there anyone from down this list that you can see creating that narrative for themselves? I mean, we can talk about comeback player of the year too. I don't know if Carson Wentz actually qualifies for that, but let's just say he's good again.
Yep.
And he's with Indianapolis. Indianapolis wins the division. They're like a 2 seed in the AFC. The expectations for him now are so low. I don't think that there's any value in his number at 40-1. Like, it seems like that narrative has been thought through, or people just love betting on Carson Wentz. I'm not quite sure. But he seems to be like that type of player who we know what his like baseline goodness is, but we know what the floor is as well. And enough people think that he's at the floor, not his like median type of play, that if he just overperforms what you expect him to do, and he's on a good team, that can just go such a long way. Matt Ryan's kind of the same way as well.
So I actually had made a note for Carson Wentz on my sheet of potential bets I like for comeback player of the year. He's the 6th favorite at 9-1. Dak Prescott's the overwhelming favorite at plus 175. So I was just looking at those two in comparison, and I know people generally kind of fall towards the injury and then comes back and is great sentiment. But what about Carson Wentz just losing his job so poorly last year to Jalen Hurts, then being on a different team where, look, the Colts, they're in good position to, like you said, potentially being a top seed in the AFC, winning the division. I'm not sure there's much of a difference in Carson Wentz and Dak Prescott. And really, when it's all said and done, the betting markets think the Colts are going to be a better team than the Cowboys as a whole by about a half win. So as far as getting 9-1 there or Dak Prescott plus 175, I think that comparison, I kind of like the Carson Wentz play. Now, MVP level Carson Wentz, now that he's back with Frank Reich, where he kind of had been a better quarterback in Philly when they were working things out together and game planning together. We'll see if it can really get to that. 40-1 is probably not worthwhile, but I think the angle then on the Carson Wentz and Indianapolis Colts being, better or at least a top seed or playoff team is the comeback player of the year at 9-1.
Quan, do you have any love for anyone down this list, either on the comeback player of the year? Because I saw Sam Darnold on the comeback player of the year list. I don't know what the fuck he's coming back from. Just being on a shitty team. Like, now he's on a better team. Great. He's 16-1. Like, just kind of looked at that and was like, so if he just has an average season, he's the comeback player of the year if Carolina gets 9 wins. But if it's not Stafford for you for MVP, like down the list, is there anyone that you can craft a story for that, like, oh, Jalen Hurts is the MVP, that kind of thing?
I think if you're thinking just narrative strictly, it's going to be Dak Prescott just because of the market that the Cowboys are in and how much the NFL wants to will them into, that top seed. And, I think he has a lot to prove coming off of that injury. So I think a lot of it will be built around him. But I don't want to sleep on Josh Allen because the improvement from him from season 1 to last year was something that I don't think anybody expected. And I don't see a path anywhere in the AFC East where anybody's going to be able to stop those Bills over the next couple of seasons. They have that brilliant defense, and he was making plays downfield. He was making plays with his legs, and, they look good in the playoffs. So I'm expecting the Bills and Josh Allen to have an even bigger year. I know it's more so at the top with the favorites. I think Joe Burrow would be somebody that you look at for comeback player of the year. Once again, the narrative with injuries and the media, I think that's like the number one sticking point for most of them is, how it's an ACL injury too. So it was an ACL injury, right? I believe so. Yeah. But, those are one of the most devastating injuries to come back from. And, you kind of saw him gaining momentum before he got injured and, all this talk about the Bengals actually being a bad team and him needing weapons. So, I think that if they can actually figure it out, he would be somebody that I look at for comeback player of the year.
Pat, I got one for you.
Let's hear it.
One. Fitz Magic. 100-1. The Washington football team somehow, in some way, made the playoffs last year despite some of the worst quarterback play we've ever seen in the history of the game. Fitzpatrick, look, the Dolphins were a lot better when Fitzpatrick was under center. It just is what it is. He's always kind of raised the floor of teams. And this has Washington's a defense that, let me just pull it up. Look, they were number 2 in success rate defensively last year against the pass. They're number 3 in EPA per play. And they're going to play a schedule that's pretty difficult. So I think that's like the downside to can they pull it out. But look, now you have an actual veteran under center that I think can make it happen. And last year, Fitzpatrick, I think it was something like 43% of his pass attempts were to open receivers, which is the second lowest rate in the league. And now you have Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel. They got, I think, just the weapons that Washington has surrounding him as a quarterback are also better. So 100-1, kind of as if you like Washington as a whole, which I do, right? Like over 8 wins, I think also some value. 100 to 1 shot, just worth a little dabble. If it's magic, might happen.
I think I'm going to stick with my Sam Darnold at 100 to 1 on this one.
All right.
Listen, Fitzmagic.
If Sam Darnold wins MVP, I will buy you dinner. But if Fitzpatrick wins, you have to buy me dinner. And they're similar odds, so I think that's
You guys are going to be hungry.
Yeah, we're going without. That's probably the most likely scenario with all of this. Now, MVP stuff, I was just looking at Coach of the Year, and like Stefanski is still a co-favorite. I don't think anyone's ever won back-to-back Coach of the Year awards, for one thing, but there's expectations in place now. Like the only way that he could win Coach of the Year is if the Browns went 15-1 or 16-1 now with the extra game on. Like that just seems like a weird odd to me.
That's a good point. I haven't looked that up to see historically if Coach of the Year is in the NBA. I know it's happened a few times, but the NFL, you're right. Once you set your precedent, like that's it. Unless they really just like run the table here. I'll say this: I think one of the most heavily bet was Ron Rivera, year 2 in Washington. Again, going back to kind of the pro Washington love, he was in like the 30 to 1 range. Now it's down to 16 to 1, but that's been a very popular pick. And I guess one, if you're trying to think of kind of comeback Coach of the Year combo feel, would just be Shanahan, right? Just because I think San Francisco projects and expects to be a lot better and healthier this year, and where they end up remains to be seen. But they were just so poor a year ago and so injury ridden that maybe somehow he kind of makes his way back into the mix. And I still think he's one of the more brilliant minds in the league.
Well, you could kind of make that same case too for Bill Belichick. He hasn't won a Coach of the Year award in over a decade now.
Sure.
If New England all of a sudden, whether it's with Mac Jones or Cam Newton, is just healthy and isn't suffering from like long-term COVID or whatever the hell happened to him after he came back from the COVID-19 list last year. He just wasn't the same guy. Maybe it was another year with a shoulder injury. I don't know. But if they can find a way to manufacture like 11, 12 wins, the expectations are just so low for them now that it would be the first time that just having a normal Patriots season would be, if it would feel like they've really overachieved. And to give him his 4th Coach of the Year award where it's been so long, it just seems like something they would want to do.
I don't hate that angle either. Do you have one that you like? Or
I
you're
think
looking at?
I really hate to say this, but I think Matt Nagy has something because like
Where is he on the list?
he's
30 to 1.
30 to 1, and there's a lot of energy in Chicago, and that division is horrible. Like I don't see it with Aaron Rodgers being on the bubble and not coming back. I see if they win a division, which I believe should be somewhat easy. What are they projected at for wins?
Probably 3rd, right? The Vikings are probably still 2nd behind Green Bay.
And
Detroit's not in the mix.
the entire thing depends on if Aaron Rodgers goes back to Green Bay, I believe. And I wouldn't see Minnesota as a team that's going to be leaps and bounds above Chicago. So
that's contrarian. I'll give him that. That is contrarian.
I think the narrative is there for Nagy because, you did all this about Mitch for the last couple of years and you got the quarterback that you wanted. So if you go out there, you win a division and a playoff game, I think that does the trick for precedent, as you guys said, with a coach needing a redemption arc and a narrative right there.
Huh.
And it pains me to say that. I hope nobody. I know everybody's going to see this, but I'm a Lions fan. Whatever.
Well, what's going on with the Lions? How in are you on Dan Campbell as a head coach?
I am a lifelong LA Rams fan.
Oh, okay.
I do not. I don't like. I like the GM. I like everything surrounding it. I don't like the smash mouth football attitude anymore. I don't think that game is played. He's like one of those hard-nosed 1990s coaches, like a Marty Schottenheimer. Like the biting the kneecaps thing is completely off-putting because I get that you want to be tough. I get that you want to have an identity, but this game is about speed. This game is about creativity, and this game needs to evolve past punching people in the mouth every play. You got to be smarter. You got to be faster. And his philosophy to me is just dated. So I will watch from afar.
Any idea where Julio Jones is going to potentially land up? Because I'm looking at the odds right now, offered by DraftKings Sportsbook. Patriots 2 to 1, Titans 4 to 1, Falcons 5 to 1, Chargers 7 to 1, Ravens and Colts both 8 to 1. So are the Niners, so are the Raiders, so are the Jags are 10 to 1, the Browns are 12 to 1. Do you think, Preston, that he just ends up staying with the Falcons, although he says that there's no chance? Like, doesn't this put them in a really awkward position?
It does. It reminds me. I'm sorry, I keep saying the NBA. I am an NBA fan, but you've had these players that have had these like strong player movement roles where I just want to demand to get traded, and it's kind of worked out. And it hasn't really hit the NFL yet, but we've seen it somewhat with Deshaun Watson and potentially here, and maybe Aaron Rodgers, right? So I don't know. I hate to handicap and actually recommend to people bet this all on speculation, unless you have Julio's phone number and can text him and find out what he's thinking or if he's heard anything. It's just really tough to speculate. So I will say this: I would think that him staying in Atlanta is probably, again, don't bet this, but I think it's from a perception standpoint, him staying is what everyone doesn't want to see. There's this hype now that Julio could go to all these cool teams, right? And so people are betting all the other teams. And so him just actually staying in Atlanta and playing his first game there probably is the value bet just from a game theory standpoint, or just kind of a psychology of what other bettors are doing. Everyone, the Titans were a hot discussion either yesterday or the day before as a potential landing point, and people are betting there, or they want to see him, because the Patriots have made moves in the past for number one big wideouts on the outside. Maybe Belichick does it again, or they just want him to go to their team, so they bet their team. Maybe Atlanta's the value pick just because of that, but again, it's nothing I would go crazy on just because it's none of us really know what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's tough for me to wrap my mind around what's going on there, because if there is a team, at least with a receiving core, that could theoretically give up a Julio Jones, who it's just really weird when you see the perception on Julio. And Quan, I'll ask you about this. Like, it does seem like there's a lot of people out there who don't think that Julio Jones is good, and I don't understand it.
Really?
Yeah, who are these people? Let's talk to them.
It just there's
Tell them to call Bets TV.
I think it is people who play fantasy every single year. Like Julio Jones, the first round draft pick, and he always is a first round draft pick, but like he'll miss a game. It's like he's always injured. It's like he's not always injured. He plays like an average of 13 and a half games per season in a 16 game season over like the past 10 years or so. And it's the fact that he only scored 6 touchdowns. He's not very good. Like, it seems like people are always trying to pick apart and come up with reasons why Julio isn't a top 5 receiver in football when he probably is.
Incorrect. Like the point with a number one like Julio is that he gets game plan for. So you're throwing double teams at him all game. They're throwing different looks at him. So Matt Ryan, I'm sure, is looking elsewhere, but he's the big play guy. He's the guy that you depend on. And if you need, like I reference back to what was it, Super Bowl, the Patriots Super Bowl, that sideline catch, that should have been the end of the game right there. And those are the type of players and the type of plays that he still has. It's just, when you lose and you lose and you lose, what's the point of showing up every week? So I don't think it's Julio's not good thing. I just think that, sometimes you got to leave the team where you started, or you just need a fresh look. And I think wherever Julio goes next, he should go somewhere where he's a compliment to, I think the Cardinals would be a good idea, because you got DeAndre Hopkins out there. That way you're not getting game plan. You're not the number one guy. So you can show the flashes and you don't have to be there on every play. In Atlanta, he was that guy. And in another system, he doesn't have to be that guy, but he'll still contribute at a high level.
All right, Preston, I want to switch over to the NBA right now because obviously the playoffs are going on. And I don't really talk a ton of NBA, but I follow it I follow it digitally is probably the best way that I would put it. I enjoy to hear people talking about the NBA and breaking things down for me. I've actually been catching more. The only game that I caught so far, besides the play-in game with the Warriors and Lakers, was the first Hawks-Knicks game, which I just couldn't have enjoyed more.
Fantastic.
I love Trae Young so much that I try. He's one of the few like appointment TV type guys for me. So I'm just going to be following that series very closely. Obviously, we're recording this before the Wednesday evening games, but for Thursday evening, you have Milwaukee in Miami up to Phoenix, now back at the Lakers coming off the loss 1-1. And then Denver and Portland, now in Portland, that's tied at 1-2. I was looking at the series prices, and I was surprised that Denver was such a huge underdog. I get that they've split at home. They lose that advantage that they have in Denver. They're going to Portland, but it doesn't strike me as that there's as big of a discrepancy between these two teams as maybe the lines are trying to tell me, or maybe I just have a terrible read on this. Because right now the Nuggets are still plus 140 to win this series, and the Blazers are minus 175. Are the Blazers really that much better in an even series?
So it's worth noting before the series even started, when Denver still had home court advantage, the Blazers still closed about a minus 130 favorite. So going to minus 175 after, stealing game one, they now have home court advantage in a 5-game series. So the price is always going to get more expensive. The ultimate question, though, I think you're trying to grasp or understand is, was Denver really supposed to be plus 110 before the series even started with home court at that time, or plus 140 range now in the market? That's a fair question. I think when it's all said and done, you're looking at guard play because of the Jamal Murray injury, and it's been a lot of Campazzo, bless his heart. Everyone loves watching him play. It's Austin Rivers, and Marcus Howard's been playing like 15, 16 minutes a game, I think, so far through 2. And while it was good enough in game 2 to get a W, I'm not sure that guard play will end up being able to match what Dame Lillard and CJ McCollum can do in a 7-game series. Now, can Jokic, to an extent, him and Michael Porter Jr., make up the difference? Yeah, they might, maybe 1 or 2 more times, but can they do it for 3 of the next 5? I think Portland, again, before the series started, I actually had bet them at minus 105. I thought that was cheap, and then it did drift up somewhat. So I think it's relatively fair to what we're seeing now in this price range. And I wouldn't stay away. I would stay away. I wouldn't be backing Denver here. If anything, maybe you get a nice number in game 4 if you want to play kind of the zigzag theory, which has existed in NBA playoffs in the past where it kind of shuffles back and forth. But for me, I'm just going to sit back and hopefully my Portland series bet cashes.
Which LA, you guys are LA guys. Which LA team are you feeling the worst about right now?
That would be the Clippers.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be. He's wearing red for the Clippers. No, it's so weird. All right, I'm trying to articulate what I want to say here, because I'll say the Lakers are going to be okay, unfortunately, because of the Chris Paul injury. I think he wasn't himself, and the Lakers are going to pull this out. I think they're going to win the series. After that, who knows where they'll be at. I think they're not 100% healthy. At least LeBron isn't as quick as he's been in the past, and that could be a thing. But the Clippers, just from not even a betting standpoint, like they shifted their entire franchise to get Kawhi and ultimately had to trade everything away, SGA and picks for years to get Paul George as well. And if they come out of this with one playoff series win and then getting upset to the Nuggets in the bubble, getting upset by the Mavs here in round 1, who they tanked and punted, I think, the last 3 games of the regular season so they wouldn't play the Lakers. They wanted to play the Mavs. And then to have Luka do what he's doing to them, like, it would just be so detrimental. And so what does that mean? What's the price range now? Like, can we bet the Clippers at plus 200? I'll say this. I've gone on record saying it's going to be Jordan 1A, LeBron 1B, Luka 1C. I said that over a year ago. I think we're just kind of seeing it into light. He's only 22, and he's just going to be the best player on the floor almost always now for the next decade. But as a team, when you go to 2 through 5, my numbers, my projections, my grades still like the Clippers somewhat. I loved the minus 140 after they lost game 1 for them to win the series. Now they're over, they're 2-1 or even higher some places. So I think now's the time to buy the Clippers when nobody wants to. Everyone's going to talk up Dallas and Luka. But when it's all said and done, if Luka takes care of business and Dallas gets it, it wouldn't surprise me, just because I think he's a generational talent. And the Clippers just something not quite right when you watch them. And like, how do you just give up 50% threes back-to-back games to a Dallas Mavs team? You know what they're going to do. It's frustrating. I'm not even a Clippers fan, but I did like them in that game 2 scenario, playing them in the series at a cheaper price. And now it's even better. And I just think, who knows where their franchise goes if they end up losing first round.
So you think that they have a much better chance to erase the 2-0 deficit than, let's say, the Heat taking on Milwaukee?
Sure,
because as a Raptors fan, I've watched Milwaukee do this before.
That is fair. Can you compare Kawhi Leonard that year to Jimmy Butler in this Heat team? Probably not. The Raptors also were, I think, way better suited as far as role players like Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn, Trevor Ariza. They're just not going to get you to where the Raptors did. So you're right. Also, I think the biggest note here, though, because you don't want to, granted, I don't think Miami's as good. They're not going to shoot crazy from 3 like they did in the bubble. I don't want to just pound on Miami. Milwaukee is so much better now than they were the last 2 years for 3 main reasons. The first being the trade for Jrue Holiday, who's just a massive upgrade over Eric Bledsoe to begin with, and what he can do defensively, and also as far as creation with the ball and playmaking on another level that no one else could do. And you can't sag off him like defenses would do and set up that wall on Giannis, because Jrue Holiday can shoot a 3-pointer. So that's the first thing. The second thing is what that trade actually did to help Mike Budenholzer coaches. He is extremely systematic. It's one of the best regular season systems we've seen. In the playoffs, he would still play 10 or 11 guys in down 2-3 in a series. It doesn't even make sense. He wouldn't play Giannis more than his 34 to 36 minutes until they're down, and it's the final game of the season potentially. He's not maximizing what they have as far as like 1-4 or 1-5. But what this trade for Jrue Holiday did is their depth got worse. And now he's not in a position where he feels like he can play 10 or 11, right? Maybe he can only play 8 or 9. Especially when they start playing tougher teams, I think he'll find out like, okay, Bryn Forbes, for example, who went off and hit a bunch of threes against Miami, he's probably going to be a liability defensively when they go up against the Nets. He might be unplayable. That's fine. Just play your best 5 to 7 more often. And Bud will have to realize that this time, when in the past years he hasn't. And I think that's going to go a long way as far as. And by the way, I should say they have real home court advantage this time. Last year in the bubble, it was a little funky. And so I think that's helping as far as, those first 2 games against Miami, pulling out game 1. But I'm excited to just kind of see where Giannis can take this. And I think, the Jrue Holiday thing is just such a big swing for a few different reasons.
But just to see their odds are like minus 1,600 to win this series versus some of the other teams. Granted that the underdog is leading 2-0, or even in the 2-0 series, that no one is just this substantial as a favorite who isn't one of the big teams. It's kind of odd to me. So just looking at the futures right now, the Bucks are now plus 260 to win the East. The Sixers are 3-1. Have we gotten to the point where the Sixers have become undervalued, or do people just not believe?
Do you have any thoughts on the Sixers in general, Corn?
I don't see it. I don't have anything. I mean, no, I'm just waiting for Nets Lakers.
You think it's that simple?
Yeah, I think it's that simple.
I like the Sixers. I always have. I liked them even last year when it, blew up in my face. What they can do with Embiid and Simmons is extremely unique. But the question then is always, if you throw a double team at Embiid, do they have enough shooting? Well, they brought in Seth Curry. Tobias Harris has been playing better. They brought in Danny Green. Like, they have, I think, another level of these role 3-and-D guys that can get them to a certain point. It's tough, man. I think I'll tell you my personal projections before the playoffs started. I had the Nets a very slight favorite over Philadelphia, not very extreme. Now, again, Philly would have home court if they were to meet in the Eastern Conference Finals, and then I had the Bucks third behind Philadelphia. So I'm not like super down on Philadelphia or anything. I think they'll take care of Washington, and they have a nice setup where they don't have to play the Bucks or the Nets both because they're going to meet second round. But can they beat the Nets when it's all said and done, and find a way to defend the 3 of the best scorers we've ever seen? It's probably too tough in the end. Brooklyn's just so pure, and you saw it last night right from the get-go, even against a really bad Boston team. But you take away Harden, or you take away Kyrie, or you take away KD, and Joe Harris, who's one of the best shooters we've ever seen, just stands there and gets wide open threes in the corner and makes them at a 50% clip or even higher. And it's just too much. You can't defend it.
Just looking at it, so if you parlay the Nets together with the Lakers to win the East and to win the West, it's paying up plus 407 right now. That's not awful, but like, is just the Lakers at plus 160 the bet here, or do you worry?
For the West, they're only 160.
Yeah, plus 160 to win the West.
I'm fairly certain that if I could bet the field at like minus 180, I would like the field at minus 180. And that's if that was like a healthy LeBron. And I look, there was a play. The Suns cut it last night to actually they took a 1 or 2 point lead at one point mid fourth quarter, and there was a play LeBron was down on the bottom left baseline, backed up against Cam Johnson, and he did one of those things where he turns it out and he backs up so that he can take Cam Johnson one-on-one in isolation. This is Cam Johnson, like older guy who played a bunch of years in college, got drafted last year, second year in the league, and he tried to beat Cam Johnson off the dribble and couldn't, and had to revert back to posting him up, and it turned into a missed jump shot once a double came, and it actually might have been a shot clock violation after he passed it out and Mark Gasol swung it and it was too late. He could, like, if you can't take Cam Johnson off the dribble in like high leverage middle of the fourth quarter, you have to win this game to maybe save the series. I think he's maybe 75-80%. And if that's the case, I think they're extremely vulnerable. So I'm not feeling great about the Lakers. Again, the question earlier on, I know you asked, more worried about the Lakers or the Clippers. The Clippers is just like another level, and I think it's more interesting. But as a Lakers fan, I'm genuinely worried a little bit about where LeBron's at, and maybe it just takes him a few more games to get to that point. But the Cam Johnson thing, I think, was like a revelation to me, even though it's like such a small thing in one play. It was like, all right, LeBron's going to take over. We need a bucket now, and he couldn't get it, and ended up being a shot clock violation. And it's Cam Johnson. I mean, no offense to the Johnson family. My last name's Johnson, but like he's got to get a bucket there, and he just couldn't even get by him. So I'm a little worried.
Well, if we're mapping out the West, then if you are worried about the Lakers, I guess the fall could come against anyone at that point if LeBron isn't up to where he needs to be health-wise. That would probably pit them against the Blazers in round 2, and the Blazers right now are 14-1 to win the West, with the Lakers at plus 160. I mean, that series price, it was going to be very heavily skewed for the Lakers, although Portland would have home court in it, that if LeBron's not up to the task and Dame and CJ McCollum stay hot, like, what's the guard defense going to look like from the Lakers against Portland? I mean, obviously it's a huge big man advantage for them, but if you're dealing with a substandard LeBron, a non-healthy LeBron, couldn't the Blazers beat the Lakers in that series?
It's certainly possible. I think the Lakers definitely match up more generously on the guard play with Alex Caruso and KCP and even Dennis Schroeder. Those are guards that are all better defenders than Marcus Howard and, Campazzo and Austin Rivers. So just kind of comparing the guard play from Denver's 2 to 3 guard rotation versus what the Lakers could bring to the table there. I think defensively, the Lakers would be in a much better position. But the problem is the Lakers, they're struggling to score. They can't hit threes either. I know they're only shooting, I saw a number in the 21% range on open threes so far through 2 games. And, you expect some positive regression there. But if you don't see it, then Portland will be able to outscore them if they're not able to hit open shots and LeBron's not 100%. But I do think in general, it's actually, now that we're talking it through, it's one where I'm very intrigued, especially after these huge totals, 2 games through Denver and Portland as far as scoring. It's been massive. We might see a good series if it was Lakers Blazers to look and betting unders in game 1, game 2, right before the market kind of adjusts. I think the Lakers are just way better suited to defend what Portland does. And again, the Lakers seemingly have some issues offensively. So that's what I would probably look to do in that series rather than betting a winner, is play kind of game to game. And from a totals perspective, I think they'll probably be too high in the market early.
All right. Quan, Preston, thanks for stopping by. I'm excited to check out the new show. So tell everyone once again where they can find it, when you think that you're going to be streaming, and how they can actually call into this.
Yeah, so we have a phone number, actually. I don't know if Quan remembers it off the top of his head. He can look it up in the meantime if we don't have it. But we are going to have a phone number for call-ins next week. This is, Bets TV is the new company in production and media that we're throwing out here. But the first show, Last Word Cheetah, is what we're doing here down in Southern California. And you can check us out. We'll have a YouTube channel for Bets TV. We'll have a Twitch stream channel. We'll be putting stuff on Twitter all the time. We're going to do some evergreen videos. And I'll say this, we haven't actually announced this publicly yet really anywhere. A little teaser tweet the other day. But outside of just taking people's calls, which I think the phone number will be 661-515-BETS. I believe it's 661-515-BETS. Quan will confirm, but it came to me. But we're doing a cool new segment called Who Wants to Be a Betting Extraordinaire? It kind of is what it sounds like. It's a game show-ish contest that we're going to run where, you can call in and we can talk over games throughout our hour daily at 4 Eastern, 1 Pacific. But at the end of each hour, we're actually going to do a Who Wants to Be a Betting Extraordinaire where over the course of 7 days, people can call in and have a chance to make a run at $25,000 cash. So you call in the first day, you try to pick a game for that night. If you're correct, we bring you back on as the caller and the contestant for day 2. At day 3, you make $250. If you can get through to day 5, you get $2,500. And if you can do 7 straight, a whole week straight, picking winners, you get $25K cash. And so we're making kind of a game show out of one of our segments that I think will be really fun. It'll be really evergreen, and people will be able to follow along and either root against the person if they don't like the caller or root with them. It'll be fun just kind of for sweats every night because there's someone out there trying to be the next betting extraordinaire. And we're bringing that to you. So we're excited to do that and, have the opportunity to give some cash away too.
So that number is 661-515-BETS.
All right, we got it. Thanks, Pat.
It's going to be tough. Now that I don't use a rotary phone anymore, I always forget what the letters are with the numbers. All right.
I think it's 2378, something like that.
2378. I'm going to call in and win this money. I need the money big time. So
for sure. But we expect it. Yeah.
But the issue is I don't have the money because I'm no good at betting. So there's probably no chance of me picking winners because I was picking winners. I wouldn't need the money to begin with. So it's just tough.
That's a good point.
It's tough for me out here. So I'll stick to the losing picks. You guys stick to the winning picks. I'll tune in. I'll call bets.tv starting next Wednesday. Go check out Preston. Go check out Quan. It's going to be fun, and you can become a part of the show too with that hyper interactivity. So I'm looking really forward to it. Congratulations. Again, I think it's going to be a tremendous.
Thanks,
I think it's going to be a tremendous success. The problem is, like I said, I'm wrong about all this stuff. So,
Well, I got to bet against you now.
Yeah, we got to find a way to incorporate that into everyone can profit off of it. somehow.
yeah, you need to figure out a way to bet like the don't pass line on this. I'm not entirely
Yes,
sure.
exactly. Yeah.
Remember, once again, everyone out there, to smash the like button for the video. In the description of, or the comment section of this video, please leave your favorite over or under as it pertains to the NFL season. We're going to have a ton of football coming for you for the next 3 weeks. We're going to get our fantasy rankings out, early look at the win totals, team by team, division by division, and really breaking everything down. So subscribe to Mayo Media Network to make sure that you get in on that. I'm Pat Mayo. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!